March the 15th, 2023, good evening. I'm bringing you this rather later than normal little article because we're reflecting upon the budget today and also some market challenges. I've called this article Like a Bear with a Bull Head. Sir Jeremy Hunt's long-awaited budget was probably just what markets wanted today. You have to admit that Team Rishi Jeremy played an absolute blinder over the weekend, palming off a distressed UK banking arm to HSBC without any bluster, fuss, or, most importantly, taxpayer-funded bailouts. Mr. Hunt set out his stall today to entice more mature workers to return to the economy with pension changes, whilst trying to offer some support to working parents and young families. The pension changes are what really interest us as financial planners. We've picked out 4 main headlines with our own short footnotes for you, so here goes. The lifetime allowance has been abolished. Now, the lifetime allowance has long been the bane of our clients' lives as they try to suitably save for their retirement. This was brought in originally by Gordon Brown, and it meant that workers had to stop paying into pensions once they were close to the limit, for fear of triggering punitive tax charges, either when accessing the funds or at age 75. Respective chancellors have then chipped away at the lifetime allowance, bringing it further down to a point where many pension savers could be caught. Thankfully, someone has pointed out to Mr. Hunt that this is actually a daft idea if you want to encourage more mature workers to keep on working. The complete removal of this allowance today was quite a shock, but a very pleasant one. 2. The annual allowance has been increased. So this is another area that will affect wealthier and more mature pension savers. You used to be able to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds per tax year into your pension if you had the earnings to support it. However, this was again massively reduced by successive chancellors down to just £40,000 per tax year. Today, Mr. Hunt increased this level to £60,000. This will be a big help for those pension savers who are looking to maximise their pension contributions in their last few years of working, particularly the self-employed who may be woefully short on pension savings in their 50s and 60s. Coupled with the removal of the LTA, this could have a double impact in positivity for some of our treasured clients. Point 3. The money purchase pension allowance has been increased. So again, for many years, the government has worried about people drawing their pension and then recycling these withdrawals straight back into a pension to attract further tax relief. Bit cheeky, I suppose. So they therefore limited the amount that someone who had started taking pension benefits could then put back into a pension. This figure was reduced from £10,000 per year right down to £4,000 in previous budgets. Today, Mr. Hunt reversed this trend back to £10,000. This is still a long way short of the £60,000 amount you could pay if you're not drawing pension benefits, but it will be a help in some cases for clients perhaps wanting to access tax-free cash while still continuing to work and contribute to other pension arrangements. And finally, the 4th point we found we like is tax-free cash gets a cap. Now, the one perceived negative in today's budget for pension savers is the new limit on the amount of tax-free cash that you can draw from your pension. You can currently draw up to 25% of a personal pension plan in tax-free cash, up to the lifetime allowance, without paying any income tax. The current lifetime allowance is £1,073,100. So the maximum you can currently be able to draw is £268,275. Because the lifetime allowance has now been removed, the Chancellor wanted to stop pension savers taking huge amounts, potentially, from their pensions without paying tax, hence the cap. It could be possible that he will increase this allowance annually. If he doesn't increase it, the 25% tax-free cash amount at the very top end starts to erode with inflation. This will be an interesting one to watch. Many of us wondered if Mr. Hunt would remove the 25% tax-free cash altogether through this budget. So in honesty, today's limited cap is probably also very good news for the majority of clients. It could, though, force some clients into taking their tax-free cash benefits earlier than they planned if they worry that the cap will not increase in line with the growth of their pension pot. So that's the budget. It's a bit late. I'm going to have a drink. Enter the bear with the sore head. So following on from my starting paragraph, the scene today was really skillfully set by Team Rishi Hunt to shore up markets this week and start to give the UK some confidence again. Everything was looking great until global markets began selling off banking stocks at an alarming rate. Now I'm watching markets, they're just about closing in the US and they are picking up a bit, but it's been a dire day. Ever since Thursday last week, we've been watching US markets very closely as we digested the news that a US bank called SVB went under. What on earth caused this to happen? Well, having only sent out my market commentary about 10 days prior, where I celebrated the strengths of Western bank balance sheets, you'd be forgiven for throwing the tomatoes at me. However, stay with me on this. The SVB situation was both unique to itself and so not at all troubling, but also a red warning light to the whole US economy, and so very troubling indeed. SVB was poorly run. We've spoken to some of your fund managers within your portfolios, and they're telling us that where they held it, they got out of this stock about a year ago. This bank was heavily exposed to small tech startup businesses with unsteady cash flows. So on the face of it, this was a one-off, as SVB looked nothing like the bigger multinational banks that have very different client bases and massive levels of cash reserves. However, SVB underpinned its security through using US government bonds. This problem is not dissimilar to what happened in UK pension funds holding UK government bonds back here in the autumn, as these usually safe haven assets were decimated by interest rate hikes, so the underlying security was eroded. And there you have it. We're not, in my humble opinion, facing a banking crisis such as we did in 2008. However, we are facing the hangover of central bank obsession with backward-looking data and interest rate hikes, whilst they persist with trying to offload government debt into already frazzled bond markets. You just couldn't make this up. This week, I heard the method that the Federal Reserve, Fed, uses to calculate inflation in shelter, which is housing rental costs. And it's mind-blowing. Do they perhaps use larger software algorithms provided by real estate websites to track rental costs in real time? No, they actually still call up people on the phone in a random sample to see if they're at home during working hours and then check with them to see if their rent has risen. The data that central banks consider is massively outdated by the time they're trying to act upon it. There is also a huge lag between rates being hiked or cut and the desired effect. Look, take the great crash of 2008, for example. The Fed massively cut interest rates to stimulate markets. But it took over 9 months before this medicine really fed through into the recovery of the markets. And so I believe the same is now happening in reverse. The fall of SVB last week shows that the rate hike medicine prescribed last summer is now starting to take effect. This is the red flashing light that has got investors worried. So, is it time to panic? Should we all pack up and just cash in losses after an already terrible year? No. In a really weird way, the collapse of SVB and the rout on banking shares this week gives the Fed and Bank of England some serious concerns. Have they overcooked their attempts to curb inflation and thus risk a hard landing or global recession? I personally think that this is a great point for the Fed to pause the interest rate hikes. This allows them some breathing room to try and see how long the tail is on the decisions that they took last year. Now, if the Fed and other central banks around the world take this approach, as recommended here by Darren, then we can see a huge opportunity for bonds and possibly equities as well. Indeed, and this is the exciting news for more cautious investors, bond yields have been falling considerably this week. When bond yields go down, bond values go up. There's also a notable breakaway or negative correlation again between what is happening to bonds and equities. This is exactly what we wanted to see. Now, I don't expect the Fed to pivot at this stage and start cutting rates again unless things got really bad. However, there is now a real chance that they stop hiking. If that happens, I genuinely believe the sore-headed bear may amble off into the forest for some years. I really appreciate that the world seems to be lurching from one crisis to the next. It certainly hasn't been plain sailing since 2020, and we've had to work harder than ever for our clients. It would be so easy to become disheartened by the constant volatility in markets and the doom and gloom news. I just want to remind everybody how we experienced a huge market upward surge only a month ago. Okay, so the market went too early, but the evidence is clear. The markets want to climb. There's so much pent-up growth in portfolios right now that it's sort of both frustrating and exciting for us as your financial planners to see it. Hang on in there. We're here for you 100% of the way. Just call me or email us if you're concerned about anything at all or you need us to explain anything to you. Have a very good night.